Welcome back to Daybreak here on the Rise News. Time for the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they come in. And as usual, we begin with our sister publication this morning's leading headline from the words of the Minister of the FCT, Wike: we must stop paying ransom to kidnappers and bandits. Federal government declares crowdfunding for ransom in kidnap cases against extant laws. Inaugurates special intervention squad for battle. Meanwhile, a federal court quashes regulation empowering the NBC to fine, that's National Broadcasting Commission, to fine broadcast media. Meanwhile, NEC, Electricity Regulatory Commission, federal government has decided to continue subsidy payment until the economy improves. And above the nameplate of this day this morning, the Central Bank of Nigeria uncovers gross violations of market regulations, and they're also vowing sanctions, restating commitments to clear legitimate FX backlogs, and says settlements with foreign airlines underway. That's this day.
Well, the Punch is leading with the Ibadan explosion. Residents are blaming a Malian illegal miner or miners as federal government probes blast. There were corpses all over streets, says residents. Foreign names behind explosion, says Governor Makinde. Fish out those responsible, Tinubu tells police. IG dispatches anti-bomb unit, 58 houses destroyed. And the striking photographs on the front of the Punch shows just how serious the deadly blast was. And in one window there you have victims being rushed to the hospital and an inspection by top government officials in the state. It's a busy front page. Let's see one or two more headlines. Government suspend electricity tariff hike. Power subsidy hits 1.6 trillion naira. Our CBN is to tackle forex infractions with heavy sanctions. When will that be? That's the Punch.
Let's look at Tribune newspaper. On its front page, the Ibadan explosion. Victims recount ordeal, 58 houses damaged. Foreigners listed as owners of mining company. The question will be, one hopes these people are brought to book who caused, you look at that destruction on the front page of the paper. 3 dead, 60. 3 dead, 60 out of 77 injured, discharged. Perpetrators must be fished out. Exactly. Edo 2024, Igodalo formally declares for governorship. Jimo Ibrahim canvasses world leaders' support for Tinubu in economic policies. Kidnapping, FEC warns against crowdfunding to pay ransom. NERC approves the electricity tariff increase for discos, retains subsidy, and CBN on its forex transaction abuses in clearing liabilities backlog query. Fuel subsidy removal has eliminated cross-border smuggling of oil products. That's for the Tribune.
The New Telegraph this morning, leading headline on kidnapping across the country. Crowdfunding for ransom payment unlawful, says the federal government. Says it will embolden abductors to ask for more. And state's panel already investigating the Ibadan blast as FEC deliberates on reduction of food prices and the ease of doing business. At the bottom there, the Central Bank of Nigeria hires forensic firm to checkmate forex transactions abuses. Also clears $2 billion forex backlog. And on the Ibadan blast, one of the victims says, my family has been rendered homeless. That's an ex-Oyo deputy governor. Meanwhile, INEC clears 11 parties for February 3 by-elections. And Nigeria travel agents lose $400 million to offshore ticket purchases. That's the New Telegraph.
The leadership leads with education this morning. Doubt trails January student loan take off. Student body says no portal open for applications. urges President Tinubu to act before month end. Commencement plans still intact, federal government declares. I recall the Minister of State for Education yesterday did talk about the student loan takeoff, and he said January is sacrosanct and it is going to take off according to the president's intent. Well, other stories above the masthead of the leadership this morning. 9,734 persons killed, 4,067 others abducted, and that's for 2023 alone, according to a report by the leadership. And by elections, INEC releases final list of candidates. The leadership for you this morning. Let's look at what the Sports Extra is saying. It's crunch day for the Super Eagles. Nigeria versus Ivory Coast. Here, 100% battle ready. Yusuf ruled out of clash. Fans warned he will be benched. Whether the coach Pesero will listen to what the fans are saying, your guess is as good as mine. Pastor Pesero banks on God. That's a jibe there. Great to Eagles, where Ivory Coast, we fear nobody. And you look at the top mast, United willing to pay £130 million for Vinicius of Madrid. Webb admits Liverpool VAR error. Osimhen reveals EPL desire. Morocco thumped Tanzania 3-0. Today's matches: Equatorial Guinea versus Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast versus Nigeria, we just talked about it, and Egypt versus Ghana. We'll see how those matches play out. Well, wishing Nigeria the best. Indeed.
All right, let's move on to the international papers. The Guardian UK this morning. Sunak's Rwanda bill survives as Tory revolt melts away for now. Frantic 11th hour talks persuade rebels to avoid endangering the Prime Minister. The Guardian UK.
The Guardian, yes, the Guardian UK. Foreign papers.
Guardian UK. Sunak's Rwanda bill survives as Tory revolt melts away for now. And the leading photo, quite interesting, on the front page of the Guardian UK. Showstopper English National Opera hit by strike over job cuts. These are some of the performers at the English National Opera who are set to strike over some job cuts. In other news on the front page of The Guardian this morning, Iran warned after attack on Pakistan terror cells. That's The Guardian UK.
Well, a couple of international papers this morning do have the revolt about the Rwandan bill by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, as well as the Royals' double health shock. But for want of time, let's bring in our analyst, Frank Tia, to analyze some of this top stories on the front pages for us this morning. Great to see you. Happy New Year. It's the first time I'm seeing you this year.
Thank you.
Great. If you look at the front pages of the national dailies, Frank, this morning, most of them lead with the Ibadan explosion, the security situation. Let's pull up this day, for instance, our sister publication. And the SCT minister has been speaking. Wike, he was in Buhari yesterday. He missed the Federal Executive Council meeting to go there. He says we must stop paying ransom to kidnappers and bandits. That was re-echoed by the Minister of Defense, Badaru, who says this just fuels the situation. Frank, what do you have to say to this situation?
Yeah, you know, for countries like the United States that have had a very solid policy that no negotiation with terrorists, no sort of compromise with criminals, that kind of policy appears to have helped them quite a lot. For us as a country, the desperation to save life and to ensure that to avoid grief has actually led a lot of victims of kidnapping to often paid ransom. Attempts have been made in the past in this country to criminalize the payment of ransom, and it generated an unnecessary controversy in the sense that why should government tell victims, family members of kidnapped victims not to pay ransom when it is first and foremost the responsibility of the government to protect life and property. So the debate goes on, but as you see, people, and particularly government, you know, they have to be resolute. There shouldn't be, as a matter of policy and as a matter of law, there shouldn't be any form of payment of ransom to kidnappers. It's difficult. It's an emotional problem when you say somebody should keep money, knowing that his loved one is under one form of trouble or the other in the den of kidnappers. But again, if we stay on it for a long time, it's just a matter of time. Kidnapping will not be that lucrative. But again, very sadly, the security forces, the police and the Department of State Services are not actually living up to their responsibility when it comes to fighting the crime of kidnapping to the halt. They're not giving it the level of momentum that it requires, given the fact, and so it has festered. And now the FCT is the eye of the storm at the moment. Something needs to be urgently done. Another sad thing, again, which I have often tried to explain, is the lack of accountability of the security community. Look at the stories of kidnappings that have happened in the FCT. We do not have, I'm not aware, there could be, I must say, but I'm not aware of any situation room a 247 situation room that gives a blow-by-blow update on what's going on what the forces are doing, not necessarily giving, information with regards to the strategies that they are adopting, but giving the sense of responsibility that the security forces are actually, on top of the game. But that's not happening. It seems as if we have established a norm that only the unlucky ones get caught in the kidnapping rage that is going on across the FCT. And if it ever happens to any person, that person should just pray. Just like the First Lady said, prayers are what are needed to release some of the kidnapped victims at the moment. That nothing could be more irresponsible on the part of those who have the responsibility of protecting citizens.
You see, don't pay ransom. It encourages the kidnappers and then security people being on top of their game. Well, today, Frank, is the crunch day. They drew 1-1 against Equatorial Guinea in their first match. While we're talking security, we talk sports. Today they're playing Cote d'Ivoire, the host. And Gretel says, we're not afraid of anybody. Nigeria should win today's match. What do you think?
Well, sports plays a very important role in Nigeria's socio-political life. Unfortunately, we have seen a decline, especially for me, in the investments we've had so far. I don't want to consider those days where the military invested so much money in sports and we got a lot of medals at the world stage. Unfortunately, it's becoming very difficult now for that fever that unites Nigerians together. Definitely, Nigeria must win. The last outing with Equatorial Guinea was a disappointment, I must say, because the expectation was quite high. Unfortunately, it came out as a draw, and Nigerians, as usual, if they are not talking politics, the only thing they talk about is sport. And when they talk about it, it appears that the millions of Nigerians who are interested all turn themselves into mini coaches, criticizing the head coach and wishing that, calling for his resignation. But forgetting that for us as a people and government, it's important that Nigeria shines at every global or regional tournament in order to give that sense of unity that nothing else in this country has been able to give. So the players must actually rise up to know that they are like ambassadors, diplomatic ambassadors and ambassadors that can actually create some serious political value back home, which is socio-political cohesion, which is badly needed in our country.
Mr. Tietie, if we take a look at the front page of this day, there's a story I want you to touch on. Federal court quashes regulation empowering the National Broadcasting Commission to fine broadcast media. Now, the reasoning behind this decision is grounded in the principle that the NBC, being an administrative and regulatory body, does not have authority to exercise judicial powers, so separation of powers. Now, what are your thoughts on this decision? And also now, what are the functions of this regulatory body if it can't sanction airing broadcast media houses?
Okay, there is an elementary principle of law that in Latin is quoted as nemo judes in causa sua. That is, you cannot be a judge in your own court. You cannot be the accuser and at the same time be the judge. I'll go straight to your question. What's the function of the NBC? Generally, the NBC is supposed to set broadcasting standards, and it must not only set such standards, it also puts, things in place to ensure that, to help, to support broadcast houses on how to achieve those standards, and not necessarily a revenue generation agency. And then it cannot also exercise quasi-judicial functions in the sense that it will throw out an accusation and then at the same time sit in judgment over the persons it has accused in the hope that it will find them and collect such money. So it goes in every way against the principles of natural justice, against the principles of under Section 36 of the Constitution, which require fair hearing in the sense that when the person that does the accusation also carries out a judgment, therefore there is reasonable likelihood of bias to the extent that it defeats justice. So what the courts have done, they simply restated a very important principle that has been there, and it's laughable that it existed for so long until it has been recently challenged.
And Frank JJ, let's talk about the Ibadan situation. Governor Seyi Makinde seems to be on top of the situation. A situation room has been set up. The federal government is a bit more cautious about putting a finger to a cause at the moment. The governor did say it's explosives by illegal miners. We now know that over 50 houses were damaged in that deadly blast, Frank JJ. Another paper is reporting this morning, I think it's The Punch, if you can put it up, blaming a Malian miner for this destruction, Frank.
Oh, well, it's pitiable, sad. First, commendation to Governor Makinde for responding like he should as a governor. But not making quick statements may not be too necessary at this time until the outcome of a thorough investigation. But we forget that the goal of regulation oftentimes is to ensure, not only to ensure standards, but to prevent mishaps like this. Our forces and our regulatory agencies here don't appear to be learning so much from comparative happenings in other parts of the world. And the blast in Lebanon should have taught us a lesson that we do not keep chemicals, explosives, and other forms of dangerous items around residential areas, like for example, in the way they site petrol stations or keep gas filling stations. Unfortunately, we don't appear to have learned much. The investigation will have to be so thorough, because we're having an insult here on our national sense. When you say a Malian, how did he get the license to import those things, and how come he stored them in a residential area that caused this kind of destruction? This is a time of mourning, but it also comes as a time of sober reflection, to the extent that those who carry out regulation, especially the Nigerian customs, must realize that if they don't do their job properly, it has a way of turning around to be destructive in a very large scale that perhaps they themselves and their family may not escape. So the call for national duty, that everybody should just do his or her own job in a manner that is patriotic, in a manner that has to do with, preventing what is possibly going to be harmful to oneself. So our regulation and enforcement in this country are a big problem.
A quick one before we let you go. On the front page of the Daily Trust. All right, we don't seem to have any time, but this would have been an interesting discussion. Security agencies infiltrated by fifth columnists. That's the Plateau governor talking. Thank you so much, Frank Tete, for being here with us on Day One.